This video is about our first stratified societies in the Aegean. I talked about these in a previous class where stratified means we start living with people, with people in charge and people in the bottom and people in the middle. No longer sort of egalitarian societies, but with big public architecture and uneven distribution of wealth. This begins in Mesopotamia and in Egypt around 3000. It really doesn't happen until about 2000 in Greece, despite the fact that they do have bronze. It happens in the Middle Bronze Age, beginning about 2000 BC. I'm rounding off the dates a bit. And we get Minoan Palaces. And there's about, there's three definite Minoan Palaces. They've found a couple more in the last few years. We're only going to talk about one. That's number 31 here in the center, north of the island, Knossos, which you hopefully know from mythology. And if you don't, we'll talk about it a little bit. There was a nasty king, Minos, who controlled the site of Knossos and all of the Aegean. And as the myth goes, he forced all subservient cities to send him a young virgin every year so he could sacrifice this to the Minotaur that lived in a labyrinth at Knossos, in a maze. And as the story goes, the king of Athens, Aegeus, had to send his son Theseus to be the one that is sacrificed. Theseus gets there and he ends up falling in love with the daughter of King Minos and his wife Pasiphae. And their daughter's name is Ariadne. Now Pasiphae had another child, not with King Minos though. It was with a sacred bull that Poseidon had sent as a gift to Minos and Ariadne. And from that she produced the Minotaur, a bull-headed man. And he lived in this labyrinth and he would kill these offerings that would come every year. Theseus, however, would be in love with Ariadne, and Ariadne with him tells him, or gives him a ball of string and a sword. And so as he goes through the maze, he releases the string, so he'll be able to find his way out. Kills Minos, or kills the Minotaur rather, and then leaves the island with Ariadne. There's a bit more to that myth, but we'll leave that there for right now. Pasiphae and Minos were the parents. Ariadne was the daughter. Aegeus, or by the way, Theseus, on his way back to Athens, forgets to change the colors of his sails and change them to white, from black to white. And they were black because he was going off to his death, but he survived. He's coming back, and they should be white, but he forgets to change them. Aegeus sees the black sails and throws himself into the sea to kill himself. And it is hence been called the Aegean Sea, named after Aegeus. And here we see a couple shots of the site of Knossos. And we will talk about this in greater detail as we go through the lecture. And here is the plan of Knossos with this large central court. But what's important for us vis-a-vis the myth is the complexity of the plan. So we can see it is very labyrinth or maze-like. Certainly in comparison to anything that existed prior to that in Greece, it was far, far, far more complex. By the way, there are other palaces on the island, all sharing these generally same plan with a central court. The surrounding buildings vary, but there are variations on a theme, and Knossos is by far the largest. And we can see here in this reconstruction a shot of the uh, plan of the palace here, and we can see that it is multi-storied with that central court. We're looking from the northwest or from the northeast to the west. We can see the multi-stories of it. If we step back a little bit and go from the southeast looking west, we can see that it slopes down a hill as well, and that there are multi-storied buildings, including a four-story building, which is, was unknown in the Aegean at that point. So these are massive palatial structures. Now, a gentleman by the name of Arthur Evans would go to Greece, into the island of Crete around 1898 or 99, and start excavating this site. This location was never unknown. There was a village of Knossos, there's still a village of Knossos, but nobody ever bothered to excavate it. And he would excavate it and find the foundations for these buildings and reconstruct a lot of the site. And his reconstruction is not crazy because there are many ways in which we can figure out what it looked like. For example, we have a house model here that shows us these typical Minoan columns, which are wider at the top than they are at the bottom. It's 2 stories. Also see the slit windows on the bottom floor. And we also have faience house plaques. These are small little plaques that show us generally what these houses look like. So Arthur Evans had a general idea of what the palace would look like. And here we can see its interior facade and the central court. This central court these buildings are even reconstructed, but he leaves them half done in order to make it look more like a ruin. And notice on the bottom slide on the right that 4-doored structure. Well, that 4-doored structure we see here again on the top, and a replica of it on the bottom, or a reconstruction. And we can see this multi-stories with these Minoan columns that get wider as they go up. But that 4-doored entrance on the bottom is the throne room. And I'm going to come back to that in a little bit. But what I want to talk about first are the buildings to the far left here, these rows of rooms. And these are called magazines. These are places where a large amount of food was stored in these very large vessels called pithoi, and then frequently lowered into these squares here. These pithoi can hold an astronomical amount of, astronomical is too big, but hold a large amount of liquids and food. And these palaces had so much that there are obviously people bringing in their agricultural goods, most likely for some sort of redistribution, if not taxation. And add to the aspect of these buildings being palaces. Here's a close-up of one of these jars called a pithos. It is about a little bit shorter than I am, very large, very hard to make, and we can see the loop handles on it, so they could be lifted by ropes. And here are just some more examples. There's many of them at Knossos, and yet again some more, with handles all over the place, etc. These are very impressive structures, and or pieces of pottery, I should say, and to make one, you have to only fire one at a time in a kiln because they're so big. And you have to be not only just a specialist potter, but you have to be, amongst potters, a specialist. Now, so there's a big storage area to the back of where we're looking now, and we'll go back to the central court and to this 4-doored structure here, which is the throne room. There's another shot of it with the steps going up, and we can see the partial reconstruction. And now here's the throne room. It has the legs constructed into it, although they're unnecessary. They're just sculptures into the stone. It has what's called a scalloped back, that is to say, it undulates or waves around the sides. And then there are frescoes of griffins facing it against a background of plants. And those griffins are wingless, and that the significance of that is not clear. but griffins are definitely signs of power. At least they are when they're used in the Middle East, where they certainly got this from. The Notice underneath the seat is a crescent moon, and this has led some to think that perhaps Knossos was run by a queen, and there was a matriarchy. And there's other aspects of Minoan artifacts, figurines, etc., that we will see that reinforce this idea of the prominence of women in the society. Here's another shot of it with this huge basin at its in front of the throne and the griffins. And as we cross the room, and you can use this basin as orientation, there is steps going down to a subterranean room that just dead ends basically, and this is called a lustral basin because we believe there was ritual bathing in these. We'll leave that for another time. I do want to point out that the Minoan columns here, notice how they get thicker as they go up and then have very simple pillow capitals. That's the top of them. Now, this is our earliest throne in the Aegean and one of the earliest there is in the whole region. So it's our first sign of royalty here. Across the central court from it is a grand stairwell with these wonderful Minoan columns, these red painted here. And this is one floor. We'll come back to the frescoes in the background there later on. This is a multi-storied stairwell here. This is once again, this is the top going down, and then here's another shot. So we can see how multi-storied this structure was and how sophisticated the architecture is. And once again, compared to what was going on in the Aegean at the time, very complex and maze-like. Here we just see some more examples of Minoan columns in the partially built structures. And just to give you an idea of just how large and colorful these palaces were. Now there's a very important fresco called the Toreador fresco that is just symbolic of sort of the Minoans, and we can see the emphasis on a bull here, reinforcing the idea of the Minotaur, etc. This is a fresco. That is to say that it is white plaster on the wall, and while the plaster is still wet, the colored plaster is used to paint onto it. And so none of it can dry before it's all painted, and so it has to be done fairly quickly. And here we see three people. And the Aegean Bronze Age, they copied the Minoan practice of depicting men in red and women in white. This one's sort of strange here because these women on each side, though they were in white, they wear cod pieces, suggesting that it was something a man would wear. Put it that way. We'll just leave it at that. And then and they seem to be sort of like rodeo clowns almost, who are sort of running around to distract the bull while this bull leaper jumps over it. Here we have a close-up of this person holding the bull down with its horns, quite a feat, and they had to be quite strong. And we do see the long Minoan hair. The men had long hair, but this hairstyle seems more feminine. But in any case, we have the Toreador fresco here. It used to be thought that perhaps he or she was grabbing onto the horns and then flipping over like so. It seems very unlikely that that is the case. It's just virtually impossible to do so. We think more likely somebody would jump over the back of the bull like a like this gymnast here, this tumbler here, but not really perhaps vault off the bull, but not come at it head on. And bull games are still practiced in the Mediterranean. Bulls were very expensive animals to have, and they were, a sign of prestige, and they had to be imported to Crete. By the way, they're not naturally there. And perhaps you guys are familiar with the running of the bulls in Pamplona, and there's other sort of bull events in the Mediterranean. And so this has an early history in the Aegean, and we can see it practiced here, and it ties in with the idea of a minotaur in a maze-like structure, because this was probably done in the central court of the building. That's what the central court would be for, actually, is for this type of entertainment. Now, I showed you the stairwell before, and it has these 4 figure-8 things painted onto them. And what these figure-8 things are shields. And the way they worked is that they were figure-8, so you could, if you were an infantryman, you could pull your shield or sword in beside you, and then it's blotchy like that because it had leather on it, animal hide, and then a big wooden boss on it. So this would surround your body, and it's most likely a place to hang shields, perhaps, with a nice running spiral behind it. And here is a nice reconstruction. And we have run out of time. I'll end there.